Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel, the main event here. And today we're going to be talking about the 4 new Paradox Pokemon introduced in the Indigo Disc DLC. Walking Wake and Iron Leaves will not be in this video. I do have other videos talking about those Pokemon, so if you want to see those, go check those out. This will contain spoilers. I try to keep it as spoiler free in the thumbnail and title as I could. And I'm also starting with Raging Bolt because it was advertised, but we're going to be jumping right into 2 of the spoiler Pokemon right after this. So if you don't want any spoilers, you know, it's fine. You can come back later. So we're going to be going over each Pokemon stats, their typing, their signature moves, and like their move pool for the most part. So we're going to start with Raging Bolt, which has a phenomenal typing in Electric Dragon. Dragon is usually weak to Ice, Fairy, and Dragon. Electric only adds 1 weakness in Ground, but it gives you the ability to hit Water and Flying for super effective. And then Dragon hits Dragon for super effective, so you hit a couple things for super effective. And you have a lot of like you have all the resistances that Dragon bring, right? So Fire, Water, Grass, and Electric, but instead of just being resistant to Electric, it's 4 times resistant to Electric, right? So that's really, really good. Its stats are what's really important in this thing though, and its signature move. Its stats, 590 base stats, which is really good, really strong actually. And it's distributed really well. Distribution is kind of everything when it comes to stats, because you could have 700 base stats, but if they're in stats that you're not using, they're being wasted. This Pokemon has no stats in the stats that it's not using. Not using its attack stat, and it's not using its speed stat, right? We'll get to this why it's not using the speed stat just now. HP being 125 makes this 91 defense and its 89 special defense go much further than they normally would because it has a high HP stat, right? 125 HP and 91 defense, plus the resistances that Dragon gives you to stuff like Grassy Glide, Wood Hammer, Surging Strikes, Flare Blitz, etc. is going to go such a long way in the current metagame, which is very physical and very elementally oriented, right? The special defense stat is great. With a defensive or a neutral Terra, you can survive like Moonblast and stuff like that. You will need the Terra in order to survive them. You can't survive it otherwise. But with a defensive or neutral Terra towards it, you will be able to. The most important thing here though is this 137 attack stat. We were all waiting for this attack stat because we knew it got the signature move. Now I'm going to scroll up for it. Thunderclap, I believe it's called. Yep, Thunderclap. This one. Thunderclap is a electric sucker punch. It's base 70. And if the opponent is readying an attack, you can hit it first, right? So the same way Sucker Punch works, if you are trying to attack and they click Sucker Punch, you get hit first. And this move will not work if they click something like Swords Dance or like Substitute or Protect or whatever. It just won't work because they're not readying an attack. That's why I mentioned the speed stat not really mattering as much, because it has this priority. Now, I wouldn't recommend, like, how you guys obviously have seen people play with like Champao, for example, right? Champao usually runs Ice Stab, a coverage move, maybe Dark Stab sometimes, but typically a coverage move, and Sucker Punch as its Dark Stab, which creates situations where it can't use its Dark Stab if priority is blocked. I don't think Rising Voltage can only run this as its only electric move, in the sense that right now Urshifu is kind of the dominant Pokemon in the metagame. So people are going to be preparing to be able to block priority, right? So if you're stuck with your only way to hit Urshifu being blocked behind priority, you're going to have a rough time regardless. So I think you're going to have to run one of its other regular electric moves like Thunderbolt, most likely Thunderbolt because it's the most consistent. And then you can kind of pick your Dragon coverage if you want it. It gets like Dragon Pulse, which is usually not run, but with the base 130 special attack stat, you probably can run it to some success. And then you could just run Draco Meteor, right? Just go for big knockouts off that 137 attack stat, special attack stat, because 130 base power move, 137 base special attack stat, it's just gonna knock stuff out. Like, it's going to destroy things. It also gets Dragon Cheer, which is a new move that was introduced in the game. It's a TM that you use to evolve like actually it counts as a spoiler, so I'm not even gonna say that. But it's a TM, and it raises the user and allies with a draconic cry so that their future attacks have chance of landing critical hits. I have a full thread on Twitter, PokeMaineEvent on Twitter, a full thread explaining how Dragon Cheer works, and how much of a buff it gives to the allies if they're a dragon or not a dragon, and if they're using crit boosting items and stuff like that as well. So go check that out. But this thing is going to be like day 1 of regulation F. It's going to be everywhere, just because Urshifu Tornadus is so strong, and this thing counters both of them by itself. Obviously, those players who use Tornadus Urshifu will find ways to adapt as well. But by the sheer fact that they have to find something to adapt to, is already making players kind of like celebrate. Not me, because I like Urshifu, but I can't hate this. This Pokemon is really, really good. and it's going to be, it might win one of the first like Reg F regionals. I wouldn't be surprised if it did because it's so strong. So like I said, with the spoiler warning, we're gonna get into one of the unadvertised Pokemon now. So this is your final chance to go. Iron Boulder is the Paradox form of Terrakion. This is a future form. This one has rock psychic typing. Rock psychic typing is interesting, right? Because it's a good offensive typing. It hits everything for neutral except steel. Steel types resist rock and psychic type moves. But this one does have coverage options to hit steel types with. Its stats, we're gonna go to those right now. 124 speed. For a while, speed stats like these had gotten crept out by stuff like Tapu Koko, Aleki, Flutterbane, Iron Bundle, Calyrex, Zacian, stuff like that, right? But now, because things are running more bulk, because Pokemon have gotten so strong, and they're not running like as much speed, and because things are running more speed, things are running more offense. So they're running like attack boosting natures, special attack boosting natures, versus their speed boosting natures all the time. So this 124 actually becomes blistering fast. So you get a good chance to go before like everything in a sense, right? Good special, really good special defense stat, right? It makes up for like the HP, which is good, but not like 125 like the previous one. 108 special defense is kind of really good. 90 and 80 defense is solid physical bulk. It's not the end of the world, and because you do have the psychic typing, you are not taking super effective hits to fighting, which is good. However, I do have to say that like defensively, the typing is not like great, right? Because psychic is weak to ghost, it's weak to dark. Yeah, it's weak to ghost and dark, and then rock is weak to, usually weak to fighting, but not because of this. But it is weak to ground. It's going to be weak to steel. It's going to be weak to grass. It's going to be weak to water. So it does have a lot of weaknesses, but sometimes when you're that offensive, you can kind of get away with it. And plus with like Terra and the ability to like hold stuff like focus stats, you can kind of get away with it. Its signature move is I forgot the name, Mighty Cleave. Mighty Cleave user wields the light that has accumulated atop its head to cleave the target. This move even hits if the target protects itself. So basically they're saying it swings its rock so hard that it smashes through protect. One, that's a really strong effect. Obviously we know that because of Urshifu hitting through protect. But also it's a base 95 move, which is like unheard of for 100% accurate rock type moves. The only thing we've gotten close to that was the Ivy Cudgel, which is base 100, but that doesn't hit through protect, right? This one does, and it's base 95, and it's coming off that massive attack stat, right? That well, not massive, but really high attack stat, 120. You can run this thing like adamant and still outspeed stuff because of the high speed stat, and you can get a lot of damage off. I know some people are worried because of the defensive typing, and they're also worried that there's going to be a lot of intimidate, but like you can kind of run a clear amulet on this thing and kind of play around intimidate, use its speed to play around some of the weaknesses that it'll have, and like the middling-ish, the physical defensive bulk. And I think it could be good. I don't think it's gonna be like meta defining. If it won a bunch of tournaments, I'd be surprised. Because I'd be surprised. But you'd probably say the same thing about Arcanine at the beginning of the format, and it's won every regional in North America, and it's won, I think, all of them in Europe as well, except for one. So it's kind of hard to judge it based off that when we've seen a Pokemon with probably worse defensive typing do so much better. Yes, it has Intimidate, but like people were using Arcanine as an attacker. It wasn't just an Intimidator, right? So we'll see how it plays, but I think it's a good Pokemon. I'm gonna be giving it a shot myself. It also gets good coverage options, like Sacred Sword, which I think is gonna have to run in a sense, because otherwise, like I said, it doesn't hit steel types at all, and that seems to be its like most reliable fighting type coverage. Get stuff like Bulldoze, that's hits the allies as well, and it lowers like speed, and it's a low base power. Gets Brick Break, which is a good move. It's a good tech move if you're struggling against screens, but I think Sacred Sword is probably going to be his best bet. Close combat is an option, but it's kind of hard to run when your defenses are already not like through the roof, and like making your physical bulk worse when you're already taking a lot of super effective hits as it is doesn't seem like something that people might want to do, but it's an option. It's kind of up to you, whichever your playstyle is. Next up is going to be my favorite design of all the new Paradox Pokemon, probably Gouging Fire. And it's got a cool name. That's a cool ass name for real. This one is a fire dragon, which is a phenomenal typing. I think this typing is so good. It is so good because dragons, like what we said before, they're usually weak to dragon, fairy, and ice. The fire typing now makes fairy and ice neutral hits into you, right? And then fire is just weak to rock and ground. So it's weak to rock, It's weak to ground, and it's weak to dragon. Fire types that are normally weak to water, now it's neutral because dragon resists water. So it's got really good defensive typing. A lot of things will hit it for neutral, which is fine because it has good bulk, which we'll get to in a second. And it has good resistances, right? It resists fire, it resists grass, it resists electricity, it resists steel, it resists bug. Like it has good resistance. So its stats are also pretty good. I think they're pretty well distributed as well. It has 105 HP, and like we mentioned, big HP stats help make your defense go a long way. 121 defense. That's actually really good physical bulk. That's amazing physical bulk, especially with the defensive typing that it has. That's really good physical bulk. And 105 HP and 93 special defense is actually pretty good special bulk as well. You can invest some points in that and be fine. 91 is a great speed tier right now, like I said earlier, because things are not running themselves that fast as it stands. You can kind of speed create things with this 91 speed stat. You'll always outspeed stuff like Rillaboom with a little bit of speed. You can outspeed a lot of adamant Urchin foods depending on how you run this thing. You might run this thing more bulky though, so we'll see. But it's in the right speed tier that you can kind of catch some things off guard. Its signature move is not an attack. It's not an attack. It's actually defensive. And I'll show it to you guys right now. I'm gonna go up to the top. It's called Burning Bulwark. The user's intensely hot fur protects it from attacks and also burns any attacker that makes direct contact with it, right? So basically, you know how like Spiky Shield, if you hit into Spiky Shield, you take a little bit of damage. This, if you hit directly into it with a move that makes contact, so you have to touch. So like stuff like Ivy Cudgel would not count because it's not a contact move. Contact moves will leave a target with a burn, right? So for example, well, we can't really use Urshifu. Iron Hands fakes out into this Pokemon and it clicks Protect. Iron Hands is burned. Iron Hand clicks Drain Punch into this Pokemon. This thing clicks its Protect move, Burning Bulwark. Iron Hands gets burned. So that is an amazing variation on Protect. And even like offensively, it gets some good coverage. Like it gets Flare Blitz. It also gets Raging Fury, which people have not used yet. It's like the dragon, it's like the fire type Outrage, where it like attacks for 2 to 3 turns and becomes confused with 120 power with no recoil. But like Flare Blitz, you can change your moves. People will probably stick to Flare Blitz. It also gets Temper Flare, which is a new move, which is like Stomping Tantrum. But it works in the same way as Stomping Tantrum, but with fire typing. It also gets like Outrage. It gets Dragon Claw. It has that good physical attack stat at 115. So you could run it pretty offensively with stuff like Flare Blitz and Outrage or Flare Blitz and Dragon Claw if you want. It also gets Dragon Dance, which I thought was important because 115 is a really good attack stat, but it's not like as high as stuff like Iron Hands or Urshifu, for example, like the 130, 140 attack stat mines. So Dragon Dance to get a +1 is actually really good because then it makes stuff like Dragon Claw, which is just a regular base 80 move, a bit stronger, which is very, very helpful. I think this Pokemon can be good. I know some people are not big fans of it, but I think it can be fine because Fire and Dragon hits everything that it needs to hit. It hits Steel, hits Fairy, hits Dragon, hits Ice, hits Water. When I say hits, it hits for at least neutral or super effective. I don't think there's a single type in the game that can resist both Fire and Dragon. Yeah, because Dragon resists Fire, but Dragon is weak to Dragon. Steel resists Dragon, but is weak to Fire. Rock resists Fire, but Dragon hits it for neutral. Yeah, so the thing hits everything for neutral damage. It even gets like Breaking Swipe, which I think could be really interesting because between its protecting move that burns you and Breaking Swipe that lowers your attack, I think it actually can be one of those real physically bulky Pokemon that kind of just slows things down. I don't think it gets Will-O-Wisp though, which is unfortunate. And it doesn't get Sacred Fire, which is why people were kind of saying that they were not big believers of it. It doesn't get Sacred Fire. Sacred Fire is the move that Entei gets that burns like 50% of the time. I think it's 100 base power and it's 90% accurate and it burns half the time. That would be really, really good for it. But unfortunately, it does not have it. So next up is going to be Iron Crown, which I think is one of the cooler designs as well. I really like the Gouging Fire design, but Iron Crown is awesome, actually. Like it's really, really awesome. I like it a lot. So its typing is Steel Psychic, which is really good offensively. Another type that only thing that it doesn't hit for at least neutral is Steel. Now this one does suffer a bit more coverage options, which we'll get to in a second, but otherwise it hits everything else for at least neutral. Its stats here are really good. I like its stats. It's very physically bulky with actually it's bulky overall. Like its HP stat is a 90, so it's not as high as the other ones, but in the way that the HP kind of carried Raging Bolt's defense and SPDEF, this thing's SPDEF and defense stats stand on their own. So the HP, which you can just invest more in, kind of just works out to making it a pretty bulky Pokemon, which is gonna need because Steel and Psychic get hit by a lot of common things. It's kind of like Metagross, the same issue that Metagross has right now, that it gets hit by Dark Ghost. Yeah, it gets by Dark Ghost and Ground, and then yeah, Dark Ghost and Ground are kind of the big ones. But the Steel typing does grant you a lot of benefits. And Psychic does give you that neutral, taking neutral hits from like close combat, fighting type moves. So we'll see how it plays. Its speed is really good. Like we mentioned, in everything in this tier is running its speed kind of janky right now, so you can manage with this. The most important thing is that it outspeeds Urshifu by 1 point. So like the fastest Urshifus that can exist, this thing can outspeed it. Simple as that. Like besides like choice scarfs and modifiers, obviously, but we're talking about just like 252 Jolly, 252 Timid on this, because there's a special attack, as you can see by its attack stat. This thing will always outspeed, and having the Psychic type attack and the special attack being good, it'll always have an advantage into that Pokemon for the most part. Its signature move is Tachyon Cutter, I believe it's called, which is really fun. It's 100 base power, but it's 50-50. Like it breaks the hits into two when it's 50 base power apiece, which in most cases is kind of better because it breaks focus sashes, right? So the mon that this has the biggest implications for is something like Chian-Pao, because Chian-Pao is a ice type that usually runs focus sash. This will KO it every single time. There's no way you can build a Chian-Pao without like a defensive terror to survive something like this, because it's gonna get hit it for 200%, 200 base power every time, but it's gonna hit it for 100 base power, break the sash, and then hit it for 100 base power again, and then just knock it out. So this is his best move by far. It's a really good move. It's one of the best moves, best Steel type special attack I've ever seen, besides like Make It Rain. It gets like Flash Cannon and it gets Steel Beam. You might run Steel Beam for some neat situation, but you'll never run Flash Cannon on this thing. This is just like always better. And then for the Psychic side, oh my gosh, it gets Expanding Force, right? That's what I was thinking about. It gets Expanding Force. So I know you're probably thinking like, oh, Chian-Pao can Sucker Punch it first. But because it gets Expanding Force, it's probably going to be run next to like Indeedee. So even if you did run into like Scarf Urshifu plus like Chian-Pao, this thing would simply just like Indeedee would just redirect the Urshifu away, so it can't hit it with Surging Strikes, and then like it would just click like Expanding Force, kill the Ursh, or click Tachyon Cutter and kill the Chian-Pao. So that's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a really good Pokemon. Also, just that new move Psychic Noise, where the user attacks the target with unpleasant sound waves for 2 turns. Target is prevented from recovering HP through moves, abilities, or held items. So like this can be something that like slows down, what's it called, Iron Hands and Dondozo, because they're both very recovery heavy Pokemon. But I don't think this will run Psychic Noise over Expanding Force. So we'll see. It might just run Expanding Force and just go for the KOs on those things. So we'll see how that plays out. But like this Pokemon is really good. It's really good. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it does not hit Steel types at all, actually. And the ways that it would hit Steel types are physical, unfortunately, right? It has like Sacred Sword, it has Bulldoze, it has Brick, just like Iron Boulder, ironically enough. So all of its moves that would hit Steel types, besides Focus Blast, which is 70 accuracy. So I honestly would rather you hit it with something else. I would rather you do anything than run Focus Blast on this thing, because base 70 accuracy might as well be base 10 accuracy. So don't run that. Find another way. Terra Blast fighting if you got to. I don't care. Find another way to hit Steel types. But this Pokemon is gonna be really, really good. Which one is the best? The best right now, just on paper, is probably Raging Bolt, just because it has the best tools, right? Its stats are distributed in the best way, where it's kind of min-max, whereas the stats that it doesn't need are not taking any of the points, versus like something like Gouging Fire, which could have probably been like a little bit stronger offensively if they maybe dropped some of the speed, actually. Could have been nice, like a little bit more offense. Iron Crown is good, but like I said, it doesn't hit everything in the same way that like Gouging Fire Raging Bolt does. And then Iron Boulder, like I said, rock typing is not always the best defensively at all, and neither is Psychic. They're both really great offensive types, so it's kind of a glass cannon in that sense. But so I think the best overall is going to be Raging Bolt, just on paper. We'll see how they go. As we get some more information Maybe I'll do some like guides on these Pokemon on like individually. Them, and I think, yeah, because I already did Walking Week and I leave, so I won't have to do another one of those. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think is going to be the best one out of these. Which one are you most excited to try? Out of all the new Paradox, even if you include Walking Week and I leave, which one are you most excited to try? Do you think they'll be legal in Regulation F, or do you think we're going to have to wait another format cycle for them to become legal? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for being subscribed if you are. Thank you guys for subscribing right now if you are not. Thank you guys for hitting the like button for your boy, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.